is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to round number 5 of the Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australia. Tonight we head to the infamous Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, which features tight corners, fast corners, and medium speed as well. It's got a little bit of everything and is sure to provide some very interesting racing for these 39 GT3 cars we have for a 45-minute race to the flag. Last time out in these GT3s, we saw a sprint race with 2 different races. This time, it's all in the one. Tonight, I'm going to be replacing Mr. Southpaw Racer, and I am, of course, Bo Albert. And alongside me, we have, as always, Mr. Brock Caddy and as well David Haynes, who are all getting set for what is a very exciting race. And we're actually going to be kicking things off very, very soon as we head to just 5 seconds with practice to go. So we will get the grid up on screen any second time soon. That was some great English there from me. But this is going to be a very interesting race with the track temperature of 26 degrees. So lots of good opportunities for passing to be happening around this magnificent circuit.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Bo. And obviously you've got a lot of experience with the V8s as well. And good to have you here with the GTs. So now we've got just about to start gridding up for the rolling start here, as you said, for the 45-minute race here tonight at the Nurburgring GP circuit. So we'll run through that now as they start to grid up on circuit. So in first place, we've got Louise Paolo Gullen. Second is John Peasnick in that McLaren, the only one in the field, I believe. Third is Anthony Winkleman from Trick Sim Sports. Fourth is Brad Watson. Fifth, we have Forzen El Nabi from Trick Sim Sports as well, a very strong team. Trent Thomas in 6th, Martin Silvassi 7th, Ross Rizzo 8th, Dane Warren, in 9th, and Gene Fiddy's rounding out the top 10.
Kicking things off from P number 11 will be Scott Zaslowski and his teammate Thomas McMillan for All-Star Motorsports, joining him for that 6th row of the grid. Behind him is Blake Neck on debut for Geodesic Racing with Thomas Hinz, making it 3 ASM cars in the space of 4 cars, with Steve Jansen rounding out the top 15. John Schultz will make things interesting from P number 16 on the grid with Maurizio Lastres, James Mackay, Cameron Stuber, and Benjamin Johnson, your top 20.
And in 21st tonight, we have Dan King, 22nd, Simon Dopp, 23rd, Alex John, 24th, Jamie McKnight, 25th, Daniel Cheney, 26th, Wayne Hewitt, 27th, Mr. Simon Mazzomo, 28th, Matt Huppets, 29th, David Mulhall, and in 30th, we have Alex Court.
And just rounding off the grid, we do have Andrew Morbridge, Blair Walton, Will Chen, Phil Otto, and Les Peck, and of course, Reese Harradine, rounding out 36 cars that will be making it around this incredible circuit. But this is a very short formation lap, so we're going to be kicking things off extremely shortly here as we make our way through the extremely tricky final chicane, where there's going to be a lot of passing opportunities later on in this race. But for now, the field is in control of Luis Paulo Gallen in that bright green Mercedes AMG around the final corner, stuck at 60 kilometers an hour, but it won't be for very long as we go green flag and his foot's to the floor as we make our way down into turn number 1, and the field already spanning out. You can see there that's Dane Warren fanning out through the start finish line, trying to make positions as they now get ready, trying to spot their brake mark as contact made between Anthony Winkleman and Brad Watson as well down the straight. So already elbows being brought out by a lot of drivers here. The leaders make it through the first few corners unscathed. See how the mid-pack goes, but so far it's all nice and well behaved. But now comes the stadium section of Ross Rizzo involved in a bit of battling, as well as Martin Silvassi making their way through this incredibly tight left-hander where things get very close for comfort, including with Trent Thomas, who makes a little bit of contact and almost gets spun by the Trick Sim Sports car, but will make that position work into the very tricky final few corners now. But it looks like so far, Brock, the entire field has somehow made it unscathed.
Yeah, we've had some close moments here, Bo, and luckily everyone seems to have made it through there. Like you said, a couple of bits of contact, but looking throughout the whole field here, it looks as though everyone has sorted themselves out. So we do have a nice little battle pack in these early stages with Trent Thomas, Ross Rizzo, and Dane Warren in those two Mercedes and the BMW here. It's just we've got running wide Anthony Winkleman, who has actually dropped off quite a bit since the start of the race, from 3rd place now down at the 5th or 6th, so that's unfortunate for him. Thomas has got some good pace here, though. Warren is still looking...
Oh, the ASM car's a big
moment in the background there. Was that Scott Solosky? Yeah, big moment coming out of the Schumacher S's there for him. A little bit of damage there, but looks like he's mainly kept it out of the wall, luckily for him.
Yeah, that was a massive moment, and he's so far... Oh, another car off as well. I'm just noticing that's Dan King, who finds himself off in between the left right, so big contact there for the Geodesic racing driver. He is not as lucky as Scott Slowski was. So Dan King going to have to suffer with a lot of damage and might even have to come into the pits because he is losing a lot of straight line speed. And Reese Harradine thinks about a move into the chicane, which he just about gets up the inside and will pull that off. So lots of damage there, which is very unfortunate. Not how you want to start this race, but Luis Polo Gallen has had the start that he would want to make this race happen. 0.6 of a second already out in front with a 1.5 over Brad Watson, and then the trio of Forzin, El Nabi, and Anthony Winkleman for Trick Sim Sport. So already the top 5 in a very nice position, all single file, which is how you want to be. But the mid-pack is still fighting very hard as James Mackay gets down the inside of John Schultz, makes himself vulnerable now, and Gene the Genie Fitties tries to make it around the outside on his fellow AMG, but can't make it happen.
Yeah, like you said, a few good battles happening in the midfield here. I was just having a look at Dane Warren. He seems to be all over the back of Ross Rizzo, trying to find a way through at the moment. And in the foreground of that shot as well, you've got Anthony Winkleman and Forzan El Nabi, Trick Sim Sports teammates, battling it out here. Like you said, those leaders have checked out here. And I'll just shoot to David here to get your opinions of that first lap, mate.
Yeah, it's always very, very tight in that first stadium section after the start. And we were very lucky not to see any significant contact between our drivers there. Then a few drivers have been caught out later around the lap, like Dan King. Dane Warren behind Ross Rizzo. That BMW is working very well for him. And Dane Warren is up one spot from where he started, and it looks like he's going to make it 2 sometime soon.
Yep, and it looks like there, through the Schumacher S, Forzan El Nabi actually picked up a slowdown, and that's hurt him quite a lot, and he's actually relinquished 1 spot to Dane Warren, so Warren gets past 1 AMG pretty easily with that BMW of his, but Ross Rizzo still in front, and now he finds himself in a bit of a Trick Sim Sport sandwich, which is not ideal, but look how good that All-Star Motorsports BMW is on the brakes, and of course, the AMG, as good of a car as it is, as balanced as it is, does struggle on the brakes a little bit for outright braking distance, so Dane Warren could be in a good position if he can get a few more tenths of a second underneath the rear wing of Ross Rizzo, but he does have to be careful behind, as at the moment there's a bit of a battle happening for the leaders. John Piesnik looked up the inside, and Brad Watson tries to buy in on this as well, almost into the back of the Element McLaren, but after what was such a good start for Luis Polo Gallen, getting it out to 0.6 of a second, it's already been halved immediately by John Piesnik, and we've seen how good he is in GT3s, we've seen how good he is in the McLaren. That is not a driver you want behind you.
No, that's it. He manages to make these cars that nobody wants to touch work beautifully for him, and he's showing that now as that fire-breathing McLaren is hunting down Luis Polo Gallen. But he's got to be careful as well. Brad Watson is very strong, and that Audi was mega under brakes into turn 1. Piesnik will keep that in his mind now because he's got to watch out. He wants to try and attack Gallen, but equally he can't give up that spot to Watson. As Watson takes, it's interesting to see the different lines here actually with the different cars as they come through here. Obviously 3 different manufacturers all here, different handling styles and different cars as they all come through the Schumacher S's now. Piesnik looks fairly strong through there actually. He's caught up a little bit of distance and he's having a look on Gallen, trying to eke a mistake out of him, but we know Gallon is a very, very seasoned driver. He knows what he is doing, and that has brought Watson back into it a little bit as Piesnik just messed up his line a little bit and goes wide here as they go onto the back straight. That is going to make him a little bit vulnerable to the Audi, albeit the Audi not having the best engine in the back of it. That Mercedes is going to stretch its legs up the road just a little bit further here. So they go line astern, very, very close into that chicane there. It's on for young and old here, and we're only 5 minutes in.
Absolutely, and they're not playing keeps. Well, they are playing for keeps, sorry, over the curbs there through the chicane. So many drivers there look like they might have almost looped it, but somehow keeping control of their cars through that chicane. But it is well and truly on as they cross the start-finish line. And look at the speed of the McLaren just getting closer and closer. Thinks about a move up the inside, but doesn't quite have the leverage to make anything happen into the first corner. But that's a very strong overtaking opportunity. Goes very, very tight on the exit to try and open up this left-hand to carry more speed, but not able to do it. Actually has a small little moment, and Brad Watson was making ground up there, not able to make the move happen. But just meanwhile as well, Dane Warren also had a very nice run through the Schumacher S and was getting very close to Ross Rizzo. He's faded a bit in the first half of this lap now, but Dane Warren's still very much looking very threatening at this point in the race, David.
Yeah, Dane Warren's picked up that position from Forzan El Nabi, who had a problem earlier. But Dane Warren has not fallen away from Ross Rizzo either. He's in a bit of a Trick Sim Sports sandwich there, but he's got some gains he could make. And Brad Watson up ahead has been the fastest car on the track 2 laps in a row. It's really making this top 3 sort of concertina together, as it were. This is going to be an interesting race. We'll have to see who decides to blink first when they take their pit stop, because this is a race where everyone will need to make a pit stop.
Yep, and that's a very important factor to keep an eye on as Dane Warren finds himself in a lot of trouble and makes sure that he does no damage to his car, but he has done damage to his race because he's lost that position of Forza El Nabi, and he's also going to be out of the draft a little bit, and that was just a big moment through the Schumacher S, and took a lot of the inside curb, which bounced him, couldn't hook up the second apex, and found his way through the gravel. So Dane Warren, after what was looking...
Oh, sorry, we've just had Piesnik run wide at the chicane, final chicane there, and let Watson through.
Oh, there we go. So change of position, and look at Winkleman. Winkleman trying to make something of this as well. And also, Lewis Paul Gallon slow, and he's going to relinquish the race lead to Brad Watson. So Watson does a Bradbury from third all the way to first, and this is going to be on into turn 1 as well here, because all of a sudden, Piesnik has so much momentum, so does Winkleman. Paulo Gallon has to go defensive, and this is going to get very tight as Winkleman tries around the inside, whilst Piesnik tries around the outside, getting very tight. And if this continues, Brad Watson might have an opportunity to run away, but Piesnik tries to fall back in line here, and he might just be able to succeed in doing that. But that was a very messy end to the lap, and all of a sudden we have a new race leader, a new driver in P number 2, and it's all shuffled around with the 2 Mercedes of Winkleman and Trent Thomas all buying into this now.
Yeah, and that Audi of Brad Watson looks very strong here. So I think Gallon is a bit of the cork in the bottle, if you will. And now that Watson's free, Piesnik has got to get past Gallon. And we've got contact between Winkleman and Gallon here.
Yeah, just a little bit of contact there as he was getting very opportunistic through that last little section. But look at the different lines they're taking through this corner. With the camber, you can run there. You can V the corner off. You can run around the outside. You can just run tight. And all 3 drivers there were using different strategies as Winkleman gets a little bit loose heading through the Schumacher S and has to fight the Mercedes. Loses ground to the Piesnik, who is still trying to find a way past Lewis Paul Gallon, who was appearing to struggle a little bit, did not make that corner at all, and Piesnik thought for a second about diving up the inside, wasn't able to make it happen though. But what this is allowing is Brad Watson to run away with this over a 1.1 second lead at the moment, and Piesnik has to make a move soon, but he's not close enough, and if anything, he's under more threat at the moment from Winkleman.
Yeah, Winkleman's looking pretty strong here. He's made up for the fact that he had not a great race start here, and he was flashing his lights into that final chicane. Piesnik is defending as well. This is exactly what Watson wants to see in his mirrors. Look at the gap that he has taken out on Gallon here and the rest of the field. And we've got John Schultz around as well, and he's blown up in that Venom Mercedes. Oh! Took a bit too much curb, and he's made side-to-side contact there with Mauricio Lastros by the looks of it, and into the Armco, and that'll be him out of that race, unfortunately.
Absolutely, that was straight into an unprotected guardrail, so a big impact there for the Mercedes driver, and what has to be said is an absolutely beautiful livery, but not looking quite so good anymore, and he will unfortunately have to retire from this race. and he's parked a long way off the circuit, so should be okay. But in the meantime, we do have Blake Neck in a little bit of a fight at the moment, trying to go around the outside of Thomas McMillan. And this is Mercedes versus Ferrari, and Blake Neck just about got his nose chopped off there on his debut for Geodesic Racing. So a team change there, but having no luck at the moment getting past McMillan in that stern Mercedes.
Yeah, an interesting choice of car in the Ferrari. We don't see many of them floating around either. Not a hugely popular choice, but he's making it work there as we've got McMillan's gone a little bit wide on the exit. It looks like Neck is more vulnerable to Silvassi in the background there than what McMillan is, but for that Ferrari under brakes looks fairly strong. Like you were saying, the Mercedes, probably its one weakness is its braking capability, but Neck is going to have to watch out behind him for Silvassi. This is allowing Hins in that bright orange ASM car to skip away there in front of them as McMillan gets a little bit of dirt. That car is and Neck's off! He's done a big jump there, back onto the track, has not hit the wall though. Maybe able to keep it going, smart move there, reversing. He was looking so strong and now he's around just out of the Schumacher S's.
A lot of drivers having trouble through that section in this race, just getting a bit too much curb, upsetting the car. Some of these cars, just the way they're set up, not handling the curbs through there very well at all. That's an action spot.
Absolutely, a lot of cars finding their way into trouble, but look at Anthony Winkelman, who dives up the inside of John Peasnick and makes it work through the final corner, but does not get the exit speed, and that fire-breathing McLaren trying to come back into turn number 1 now, and Winkelman making his car as wide as possible, no way up the inside, but Peasnick will throw it around the outside, deep on the brakes, and almost gets it done, but just too deep, can't hold it, and has to relinquish, but he tries up the inside, almost contact as well. And that move was never quite there, but Peasnick's starting to get desperate. He knows he can match the top view, needs to make this work, but Winkelman not making life easy at all. And losing that spot is not what Peasnick needs, and he's really in a struggle point now. And David, I'll throw this to you. Do you think there's anything he can do with perhaps an early pit stop that maybe, just maybe, can benefit him?
Well, we've talked about this before in this series with the McLaren and these longer races. The tyres kind of go away from it more than they do in the sprint races. I reckon what Peasnick could do is take an earlier fuel stop, just go down the pit lane, let the tyres cool off a little bit, and then if he can find a spot with some clean air, some slightly cooler tyres, he might be able to put in some good laps and get an undercut potentially.
Well, there we go. So there's one opportunity for John Peasnick to make his way past a little bit of traffic, but at the moment, no progress being made, unfortunately for him. And from second on the grid, being in fourth at the moment is not what he would have wanted. But at the moment, McMillan and Silvassi continues to rage on through the Schumacher S. And we'll see if Silvassi can make anything happen, because there is a big overtake opportunity into the final chicane coming up if he can just nail this run. This is Mercedes versus Mercedes, so this is all about driver talent. Who can make the most of it? And McMillan, we know how quick he is from Scops, but these are the cars that Silvassi specializes in. He is a driver that knows these GT3 cars inside and out, and so he will dive out from the slipstream, under brakes in the chicane, but can't make anything happen. And McMillan is more than a match for him this time around, Brock.
Yeah, so McMillan, that car doesn't look comfortable underneath him. We've seen he's struggling a little bit with oversteer, particularly through some of the faster corners here. So he's going to have to watch out. As Silvassi's, he's already peaking around the inside there of McMillan. McMillan is a spirited racer. He loves a good battle here. And Silvassi's not going to defend against Silvassi. I think he knows his numbers up. Silvassi, easy move down the inside there. McMillan nearly drills the back of him trying to get the under-over done. And it looks like Silvassi's going to have that move done as they come through turn 2 there.
So a very nice move there from Silvassi, but McMillan might think about it up the inside. He's not willing to take this one lying down. Tries to fire back, takes a wide line, tries to get the speed, and Silvassi actually overrun quite a bit. So does not have the exit speed, but it's going to be a very tough battle for McMillan to get past, because he has to go the long way around this corner. But he's got the bravery to do it, but he doesn't quite have the grip. But somehow keeps it up the inside for this next corner, but can't get the run. Contact is made. Silvassi having to run through the gravel and will hold that position, but that was very close stuff, as we do have our first pit stop taker, which is going to be Blake Neck, and he's back out on track now, but that would probably just be for new tires or something along those lines after that very scary moment at the Schumacher S. But Silvassi and McMillan, what a battle that was for a few corners there, Brock.
Yeah, well, like I said, he loves a good battle, and just having a look at Winkelmann and Peasnick. Peasnick has actually ranged back up onto Winkelmann here, so that McLaren has had a second life, if you will, in the first sort of 15 minutes of this race. And we said he's fast, and that pit stop strategy may work for him. If he can get some clear air, he can put in some good laps and really use that McLaren's skills. But right now, he can't do that if he's stuck behind another car and he's getting held up. So obviously Winkelmann was doing that, and now he's in front, back where he started. But Peasnick just can't seem to find the way by any of the regular overtaking spots, like turn 1 here. Just can't get the run out of the corner to throw it down the inside, and he's trying to look left and right, but just can't get it done as he ranges up close on the bumper here. And he's trying to take that tight line that you were talking about earlier, Bo, trying to make it work, but it's just not really happening for him. And David's talked about in previous rounds as well, the tyre wear on the McLaren seems to be worse, and that pace drop-off is a lot worse compared to your Mercedes and Audi. So Peasnick has to have that in the back of his mind as well as to how hard he pushes now compared to in the last 10 minutes of the race.
Yeah, when Peasnick lost second place, it's because he got a bit too deep on the brakes into the final chicane. Maybe he's just struggling with confidence on the brakes now. He just doesn't trust the car to go deep on the brakes to make a move on Winkelmann.
That could very well be the case. So John Peasnick at the moment just maybe perhaps needs to sit behind Winkelmann for a few more laps, just get back into his rhythm, figure out the car, because the McLaren is a car that has a very defined driving window, and if you just push it a bit too hard or don't push it enough in certain areas, it can become very unstable, very snappy. So perhaps just needs to find his rhythm again, and we know how quick he can be, so no doubt still a contender for this race win at the end of 45 minutes. But pit stops will become a factor very, very soon as more takers are coming in, including Alex John and also Matt Huppert coming into the pits. As at the moment, Winkelmann doing a little bit of lawn mowing on the exit there, but because he's kept his foot in it, he's able just to keep a bit of momentum, so I don't think this will give too much of an opportunity to Peasnick. But that is not what you want to be doing when you do have a car behind, because that's just going to be giving more confidence to Peasnick.
Yeah, that's it. And Winkelmann, like I said, he hasn't had a great start to the race, but he's brought himself back up here. But that car, I don't know, maybe the Mercedes doesn't suit this circuit as well as what some of the other cars do, because we've seen a few of the Mercedes drivers struggling with some oversteer and understeer as they come around the circuit. But that McLaren tends to have some high-speed understeer. As we look now, Winkelmann's actually defending a bit. He knows that Peasnick is ranging up on the back of him, and he's got to be careful here. Peasnick taking that tight line again to try and maximise that acceleration off the exit there. He's right up behind Winkelmann, and we've got McMillan in the pits as this is all happening here. Peasnick not going to go for the move down here. Smart move. His car's looking a little bit tighter, actually, and a little bit nicer to drive than what that Mercedes of Winkelmann is, as he gets very, very close there. So Peasnick is there. He just needs to be up alongside, and you'll get this move done and up onto the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the moment, he's trying to go through Winkelmann, which isn't a viable strategy. I've tried that many times in this series, and it hasn't gone well. But for Peasnick, still trying to find a way past. And as you were saying, Brock, everywhere on the circuit that is a good overtake opportunity, Winkelmann just looks that little bit stronger and is able to build that gap and just allow no opportunities as Brad Watson continues his march out front. So that Audi, very good pace at the moment and about 0.3 a lap faster than Luis Paul-Gallen. So very nice pace from Brad Watson there, who leads this race as he makes his way into the final few corners of this lap. But we'll focus on Peasnick behind, because this is the closest he's been for a little while. And Winkelmann just overrunning, but Peasnick kind of follows him. If he could have kept that a bit tighter, opened up this right-hander and got on the power, might have had an opportunity. But again, I just don't think he's going to be close enough. And Peasnick at the moment, strategy surely has to be the forefront at his mind right now.
Yeah, that's it. He's been stuck behind Winkelmann for so many laps now, and you can see Peasnick has a strong car here. He's looking in that braking zone. He closed up so much on the back of Winkelmann. Just can't get past, and that is hurting him. Like Trent Thomas in the background here is starting to get a little bit closer. Peasnick just has a little wobble there coming onto the main straight, but Winkelmann isn't getting closer to Gallon and Watson, and that's where Peasnick needs to be. So I think pitting sooner and getting clear air is what is the best thing for Peasnick. Letting those tyres cool off a bit and going again, trying and setting some purple sectors and hoping that he can jump Winkelmann in the pit cycle.
Yeah, well, that would be one of the better ways to go about it. But Trent Thomas is actually a very important driver to keep an eye on, as you said, because last time around, he was the second fastest car in this top 6 or so battle, and he was 0.4 of a second quicker than John Peasnick last time around. So he could very well become a factor very, very soon, because he's been in his own little space, hasn't been battling too hard with anybody, so he's been able to look after his tyres, look after his car, keep his rhythm, and that is really starting to pay dividends for him in this second phase of this stint, and he's definitely making ground at the moment, so if he can just get a little bit closer, he has every chance of making this move happen on Peasnick. If he continues to struggle, getting more sideways through that long right-hander, the balance just is not there at the moment for Peasnick. So perhaps the track conditions, which are 27 degrees now, the track temperature continuing to range up as more cars lap around it, not suiting Peasnick, and that's really beginning to hurt him.
Excuse me, yeah, David, I'll shoot to you here. You had some comments earlier in earlier rounds about the McLaren and the heat of the track and the way it doesn't really react too well.
Yeah, it's the rear tyres, I think. They're just, the slip angle increases a little bit, wears the tyres down, they get a bit slidey. It's a very wide pit window here for this race. So we've seen some guys take it already. And I think some guys, including some of the Trick Simpson guys, it gets very close. Peasnick looks to the inside in the final corner. Winkelmann pushes very wide. They go side by side through the final corner. McLaren might be just a tiny bit faster in a straight line. Will he be able to get a draft? Does he trust himself to send it deep on the brakes into the first corner on the inside of Winkelmann? This will be exciting, Bo.
It absolutely will, and Peasnick down onto the brakes as hard as he can, but overshoots, and it's all too easy for Winkelmann to get back up the inside and block off the move into this next left-hander, although Peasnick will try. So Peasnick, a beautiful opportunity to make a move, but just tried a little bit too hard, and the brakes on the McLaren not doing it any favors, despite the Mercedes being one of the weaker cars on the brakes. Just a little bit too eager to get the move done and couldn't do it, but that all stems from Anthony Winkelmann making a little bit of a moment through the final chicane, got one wheel into the grass, lost all traction, and Peasnick was able to fire it up the inside. Winkelmann being very nice and giving plenty of room through that final corner, but he's beginning to struggle on corner exits a bit more, and this has really brought Peasnick back onto the rear wing of the Mercedes, and now even into this section of track where we have seen Winkelmann pull a bit of a margin in the last few laps, all of a sudden that margin is not there, and Peasnick, if he can carry the speed through the Schumacher S uphill, where the McLaren really able to use its torque, of course, so much power in that McLaren, and uphill, it's only going to be shown even more, and in the draft as well. So this is one of the closest Peasnick has been in the last few laps again, and he doesn't overshoot this time. We saw last time he was close, he just overshot a little bit. He's got it a lot nicer this time around, gets a nice exit. Will it be enough into this final chicane, Brock?
Yeah, well, I think Peasnick smells blood. And he almost had that third place and he let it go. And yeah, Peasnick's going to throw it down the inside of the chicane here. They're going to go side by side and they've made contact as well. Winkelmann nearly goes around there and Winkelmann's going to peel into the pits. So, that was a risky move by Peasnick there. And now, I mean, it's paid off in the sense that he'll be ahead. And now what Peasnick has to do is an absolutely awesome lap here and probably come in to cover Winkelmann off. That's who he's racing at the moment. So he has got to make sure that Winkelmann doesn't do an awesome out lap from the pits and then get him back again after all that effort to get past him. So I'm really curious to see how these pit stops work out, because that McLaren of Peasnick's is fast, and now he's got a good couple of seconds of clear air ahead of him to really run ahead.
Yep, so we'll see if Peasnick can make anything happen with this clean air. It's what he's wanted for so many laps, and all of a sudden he's got it. But I think that was a smart call from Winkelmann, because of course, when you're battling with another driver, you're always going to be slower. So instead of fighting the fight and just trying to hang on to that third place, get into clean air and try and make it happen. And there was a driver off all of a sudden there. That was Reese Harradine, and he's all the way off on the circuit. So a bit of a moment there for him. And he's almost gone into Ross Rizzo. So Ross Rizzo having to do a bit of avoiding action for Reese Harradine, who's really struggling at the moment. But all of a sudden, a lot of chaos is happening because Anthony Winkelmann had an incredibly long pit stop there.
Yeah, that pit stop, just looking at my numbers here, it's a 25.5 second pit stop sitting there, and then the commute up pit lane was 48 seconds. So that is massive. You shouldn't need, it's usually about 10 seconds, I believe, of fuel. So unless he's done tyres as well accidentally, but that has, well, I'm guessing that's negated the need for John Peasnick to come in and pit to cover him off, because I think he's just lost about 10 to 15 seconds on his closest rivals there.
Yeah, we didn't see any damage on John Peasnick's car, and I didn't see much, if anything, on Winkelmann's car. I don't think that was any necessary repairs, so I'm not sure what has caused that stop to be about twice as long as everyone else.
Well, I was also going to note as well that I was looking at his pit entry, as I believe that's Forza and Nabi coming to the pits now, that Anthony Winkleman was very sedated when it came to the pit lane entrance. He was not pushing very hard and just looked very, very slow, very calm, cool, and collected as if he had a 10-second lead in this race. But very, very chill. But we do have Mauricio Lastres currently putting a lot of pressure on the back of that's Benjamin Johnson as they head into the final chicane. But that's going to be a little bit easy if you're going to make it that hard through the chicane. And Benjamin Johnson has to serve the slowdown. And what could have been a very good battle, unfortunately, goes straight out the window.
Yeah, that's it. So Mauricio Lastres, he's been racing in this series for a few weeks now. Very, very spirited racer and a great racer. And well, like you said, that sort of took away from the battle that we could have had there. So looking throughout the field here, it's actually fairly spread out for the most part. A lot of drivers, we're still going through the pit stop cycle. I'll actually focus on Blake Neck at the moment, who's he's ranging up on the back of an Audi coming into the final chicane there, the 489 car of James McKee. And he's looking into the final turn here. So this is really in the minors at the moment, but it's great to see racing throughout the pack here. And Blake runs a little bit wide at the final turn there, but he's got a lot of pace. As we saw, he did have that spin earlier, which ruined his race a little bit, but obviously trying to fight back from that at the moment. As we had Jamie McKnight in the pit lane then as well. And Neck's going to throw it down the inside here of McKee. And just about make it work there. Nearly made contact. But now he's through, and he'll probably skip ahead in that Geodesic Ferrari GT3 car.
Yeah, a very nice looking Ferrari indeed. But the next target of him will be David Mulhall. But that is quite some way up the road. So Blake Neck has to pump in some good lap times over the next few laps. And Forza Nabi recently did make his way past Benjamin Johnson, of course. He's on his out lap at the moment. And his pit stop was a staggering 15 seconds quicker than Anthony Winkleman. So definitely an issue of some kind, and that was not planned for Winkleman, just to confirm it. So the teammates are going for a much shorter pit stop. So we have to find out perhaps post-race what happened there. But Dane Warren is going to be the only one of our leaders to come into the pits. And I'm a little bit surprised by Dane Warren. He looked very racy in the opening half of this race, but hasn't really had the pace in this second phase of the stint. So coming in for his pit stop now, we can probably expect him to get some very quick lap times once again at the first part of this stint. So look for him to punch out some extremely quick lap times as Simon Mazzomo finds himself in a little bit of a battle at the moment, having to defend from Scott Soslowski.
Yeah, so Mazzomo, he's racing hard in that Mercedes, but Soslowski is a sports car racer at heart. He absolutely loves them, and we see him in here most weeks. Excuse me, as he's right on the back of that Mercedes coming down the back straight here. Could see a move on here as Mazzomo is actually defending fairly hard, but opens the door just a little bit. And that's all Soslowski needed as he goes down the inside here. Mazzomo being a good sport there and making sure not to go side by side and cause any contact. That's Soslowski through into what would be 21st position now.
Yep, absolutely. So good racing there from those guys. And the next challenge for Scott Soslowski will, of course, be Jamie McKnight and the Evolution Racing Team Mercedes. So we'll see what Soslowski can do if he can make any ground in the next few laps, because we have seen him have some incredible pace throughout this entire season. But just a little trivia for those that are watching. I just want to point out that on the last lap, the top two in this race both did identical lap times, and John Piesnik in third place was only a few hundredths quicker. So the top three at the moment absolutely punching out the same lap times.
Yep, those gaps are all staying together for the lead, and those three that are leading haven't come down the pit lane yet, and you imagine they will have to soon. It'll be interesting to see which one of them blinks first.
Yeah, well, none of them have decided to come in on this lap around, so still plenty of battling still to happen. But that last time around, it was John Piesnik who was the quickest of the top three in clean air now, and taking 0.6 of a second out of Luis Paulo Gallen, who was an effective second place in this race. So Piesnik really beginning to apply the pressure here, Brock.
Yeah, so this is what we were mentioning earlier about Piesnik. He has pace in that McLaren. He just needs to be able to unleash it. So we've only got 16 minutes left in this race now, which is crazy to think. We've come half an hour already just about, and Piesnik is really showing how much pace he has in that car. So Brad Watson in first did a 154.1 the last lap. However, he has built that beautifully over Luis Paulo Gallen and John Piesnik while they were battling hard, and now can cruise comfortably out in front for the time being. I'll also point out that Trent Thomas did come into the pit lane last time round, and again, his stop was around 10 seconds. That stop for Winkleman definitely out of the ordinary there for him. but Peasnick looking very, very strong at the moment. Now within about a second to Luis Paulo Gallen, so we could see some great battling here yet again as we come into the final stages of this race. And as you've said earlier, they're yet to stop as well, so this will be interesting to see how much fuel each of them has to take and where that leaves them on track as well.
Yep, well, the McLaren, we do know, has the largest fuel tank of any GT3 car, weighing in at 130 litres. And whilst he might not need that much fuel to get the next 8 laps of this race completed, but he still will have the biggest tank to refuel, because of course it is one of the thirstiest cars as well. The Audi and the Mercedes in front weighing in at 120 litres. That's a little bit less, and those cars are a bit more fuel efficient. As we'll just see how our leaders react to the pit lane this time around. Brad Watson doesn't even think about it. Luis Paulo Gallen and John Peasnick all deciding not to take it this time around. So they are really waiting until the last few laps to take this pit stop, which I can see for one reason being traffic. You don't want to come out. You've got well, not cold tires, but the pressures are lower, which with iRacing does mean you've got a lot more pace in them. So you want to be able to use that pace in clean air. So you don't want to be behind traffic, but I don't know. I feel like this could potentially give the undercut quite an advantage to someone like Trent Thomas, who was looking very strong in the last part of the stint, and is all of a sudden on new tyres and are making very good headway as John Peasnick continues his march. And it wasn't just 0.6 of a second last time around, David. It was 7.
Yeah, Peasnick's found a real second wind in this end of his stint here. He was really struggling. The car was looking a bit iffy, and now all of a sudden he's the second fastest car out there almost. He was the fastest car out there the lap before. He's got some rhythm now, I think, and he's catching Luis Paulo Gallen, and that's going to be very close. You wonder, will John Peasnick drop into the pits rather than have to fight to get second place?
Well, that would be one of the easiest ways to get around him, but we will have to see, because of course we don't know what kind of fuel saving these drivers have been doing. The Mercedes is very strong when it comes to fuel saving. It's able to just utilize lift and coast a bit better than some of the other cars, but running that wide through the Schumacher S won't help Paulo Gallen. It definitely won't help any fuel saving efforts as he has to push his way through the sand, but nonetheless doing a great job. Just a little bit of traffic in front in the form of Dan King, who is trying to recover after what was an unfortunate lap 1 incident for the Geodesic racing driver. But Peasnick now using a very nice tactic that I love, at least, with the headlights are flashing, but not close enough. But will he be able to use this traffic to any kind of advantage if Dan King doesn't elect to get out of the way too soon? Because of course the leaders are there. He has to find a way past, but this is all of a sudden turned into a pit stop battle as Brad Watson comes into the pits, as do the two behinds. This is all about how good are the pit crews now, and how much fuel do the drivers save in the first stint, and how much are they willing to save in these final 7 laps of the race.
Yeah, looks pretty comfortable for Brad Watson if no mistakes are made in the pit stop, but this gap between Peasnick and Gallen is short enough that if one of them gets the quickest stop, it's advantage to them. I don't know if Peasnick will be able to short fuel it, but if he could, there is an opportunity to jump in the pit stops here.
Yep,
Yeah,
so we'll see how they... Oh, sorry, Brock, you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say that Peasnick was really close there to Luis Paulo Gallen coming into the pits. He closed up a nice gap there, so we're watching them. Oh, and Peasnick, he's nearly got the jump there. It looks like he may have gotten the jump out of the pit lane, and he has. So he has jumped Gallen in the pits. This is critical here. Gallen gives him a little nudge down into turn 1. They've nearly made contact. Oh my goodness, these guys are playing for keeps now with about 7 laps left here. Watson is still out ahead there by about 4.1 seconds, but Peasnick critically has jumped Gallen in the pit lane with what they had. Peasnick was 7/10 faster than Gallen in the pits there. So the question is, does Peasnick have to save fuel in the final part of this stint, or can he go all out and try and chase down Brad Watson?
Well, that's what we'll have to find out. And Peasnick already definitely not looking like he's saving fuel, trying to break the draft to the car behind. So he's on a mission, but 7/10 in the pit stop is a big saving. And now you can see just how critical that can be. And I was a bit surprised it wasn't a bit of a drag race out of the pit lane. And Peasnick was able to clear him. Just getting the pit speed limiter off just a fraction earlier really helped him as well. So very nice pit stop phase from John Peasnick there. Now into an effective second place in this race, ahead of Luis Paulo Gallen and just behind Brad Watson. But this is all going to be playing for keeps as well for P number 4. Because at the moment, Trent Thomas does look to have that position pretty safe, but Forza Nabi is still creeping in the background, and in the last few laps has been closing a little bit. And in fact, last time around, it wasn't creeping closer at all. It was 0.5 of a second, David.
Yeah, Forza Nabi was the fastest car on that last lap. I mean, because the top 3 pitted partially, but Obviously, a turn of speed closing up on Trent Thomas. This has been a bit of an off race almost for the Trick Sim Sport guys. We normally see their cars running very well and in contention for the lead. And just through the start of the race, some of them had some problems. But now it's could be for Forza El Nabi to regain some honor and pass the Mercedes with the Mercedes.
Yep, so we'll see if Forzen can make anything happen. He's definitely been closing. We'll see what they do this time around. It's a 54.7 on the clock for Trent Thomas, but a 54.5 for Forzen El Nabi, so another 2/10. So Trent has tried to respond, but respond as he might, Forzen El Nabi continues to just show what kind of pace he has across all kinds of cars, whether it's a Porsche, a Mercedes, or a V8 supercar. Fantastic pace all over.
So we're looking at Silvassi and Winkleman now, the Trick Sim Sports teammates, on the topic of that team, and battling it out hard here for the final 2 spots in the top 10 tonight. So these guys, I believe they've both taken their pit stops, and Winkleman with that really long pit stop. So that has put him back, after fighting his way back up to 3rd, back down into 9th position now with his teammate Martin Silvassi. Both of the Mercedes there, and just Thomas Hinz in front there in that ASM BMW. And it looks like Silvassi's lost a little bit of time through the stadium section there, as Winkleman, we know he has a good bit of speed underneath him. So this is going to be a recovery drive essentially for him for the last 5.5 to 6 laps of this race, I think.
Yep, and he has to think about championship, of course. He's missed a few rounds, but with drop rounds, he's still well and truly in contention for this championship. So he has to try and get any kind of points he can. And the next target for him will be Thomas Hinz, who is in the BMW, which is a bit of an odd choice, I would have thought, for All-Star Motorsports. We see Dane Warren very successful in it, but for Hinzy, I remember last season he was very used to the Audi. But in the BMW for this one, and of course, he hasn't had the seat time that he would have wanted over the last few weeks, just with personal life commitments. But he now has a very tough challenge to hold off Anthony Winkleman, who is definitely on a charge at the moment. So we'll see what he can do, and if anything can happen. But back up to Forzen El Nabi and Trent Thomas, that gap continues to come down just a little bit as Forzen makes a little mistake through the final corner, but in doing so, able to get the power even earlier for the start-finish straight. So still not giving up by any means, and it was a 54.3 for him last round, and matched by Forzen El Nabi. So Trent trying to respond to Forzen El Nabi at the moment, but anything that he can do, Forzen El Nabi at the moment is able to match or better.
Yeah, that's it. So Thomas, like we've said, he's quite a strong driver, and I don't think he's grabbed a win so far in the last couple of seasons, but he's always been there or thereabouts in that top five or top 3. So he's got some really good consistent pace, and El Nabi we know is a great racer, and when he's up the front, he really pushes hard. So right now, it'll be interesting to see. I'll just quickly point out as well that John Piesnik has actually gone just over a 10th faster than Brad Watson on that last lap, so he is reeling him in, but I think with the time we've got left in the race, it's going to be near impossible for him to actually catch him and overtake him in that time. So El Nabi, back to El Nabi and Thomas here. El Nabi just doesn't look horribly strong, as Thomas is a bit wide, but I think just taking that slightly different and preferred line for him through that long hairpin there as they come up into the Schumacher S's. Interesting to see the way these guys are taking the corners, considering they're in the same car, they're still using a different driving style.
Yeah, well, that is one of those corners that you can take so many different lines and really make it work. And 2 different drivers, 2 different car setups, and definitely trying to make the most of it in different ways, and trying to carry momentum in some places, trying to take the shortest route around the inside of the corner in others. So wait and see if that can pay off. But you're definitely right. Forzen El Nabi on this lap, not looking as strong as he has done in previous laps. So maybe Trent Thomas had a bit more in the tank than Forzen El Nabi was expecting. Or maybe Trent Thomas just able to respond a little bit when Forzen El Nabi runs into a few little issues. You can see in the final few corners, El Nabi able to make up just a little bit of ground and just close that gap down just a little bit, as one of the drivers of Phil Otto just moves out of the way to let these 2 continue their fight for what will be P number 4 in this race. So not a podium slot, but still very much fighting over as we head to just 4 laps to go.
Yeah, Bo. Now, Anthony Winkleman absolutely closing up on the back of Thomas Hinz for 8th place. That gap's come down, a couple tenths on the previous lap, and on this lap, another 2 tenths. Anthony Winkleman now within that 1 second of Thomas Hinz.
Yep, very strong pickup there, because Anthony Winkleman could be even threatening on the end of this lap. He's very much charging and closing bit by bit on the BMW, both front-engined, both German cars at a German circuit. But Winkleman, just look at the pace he's able to carry into the corner in doing so, he does sacrifice a bit of the exit speed, but in that kind of a corner, doesn't matter all too much because he is closing quick. And Thomas Hens will be feeling the pressure, but we know Thomas Hens, he loves a battle. He's never going to give up a position too easily. And especially when there's just 3.5 laps to go, he's going to fight for every meter on this track and make that BMW as wide as he can. So I expect this to be a very interesting fight over P number 8, as Hinsey will definitely put up a fight, but the pace Winkelmann is carrying into the corner in comparison. V's off the corner, gets a strong run. Hinsey not so much, running it a bit wide through the gravel, and he really has to hook it up through the Schumacher S, and doesn't quite meet the first apex, and Winkelmann just able to carry a lot more speed throughout. So he's just closing rapidly. You can get a move done into this corner, but Winkelmann thinks better of it, tries to keep it tight through this corner, make it all the way out to the exit of the grass there, then carry the momentum through, and you'll have a shot into the Vidal chicane at the end of this lap. Now in the slipstream, the Mercedes much stronger in a straight line than the BMW, but he might just not have enough meters of leverage to get a move done yet, but still, you can see how threatening the Mercedes is, but bouncing over the curb, not what you want, bottoms out, and that was just taking too much curb, too low of a rear ride height, and now with just 4 minutes on the clock, he is under pressure because we know he's quicker than Thomas Hens, but he has just made a very large gap appear.
Yeah, and the lap maybe 2 or so before that, Martin Silvassi made a very similar mistake. Those two cars were together, they were closing up on Thomas Hens, but now he's got a break because both of those Trick Sim Sports cars really struggling with that chicane.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is one thing you have to be careful of with the Mercedes, because that can run some very interesting ride heights. I believe he can run as low as 88 millimeters at the rear of that car, which I know a lot of drivers do use, as the front ride height can go very extreme as well. So able to use a lot of rake instantly, and that's being used by a lot of drivers, including Trent Thomas and Forzan El Nabi, who's thinking about around the outside because he has had a much stronger final few corners of this lap. Now able to get right underneath the rear wing of Trent Thomas, and don't think about up the inside of the Schumacher S. You've just made yourself go wide and cost yourself a bit of a run into this next corner, but he'll be thinking of the Vidal chicane, whether he can make anything happen on the Amazon.com web services Fusion Sim Racing Mercedes just in front. So Trent Thomas really under pressure to hook up the next few corners, make something happen, and see what he can do. But it was a strong exit from Forzan Nabi. He's in the slipstream, closing just a little bit. Might not be enough, but we know Forzan Nabi's always willing to go for a gap, but there's traffic in the way. Has to back out, goes back for a second attempt as well. Contact made, and Forzan Nabi goes away and has to redress the position, and does so, and in doing so actually gives up a lot of time to Trent Thomas. So Trent Thomas, although having to skip the chicane and maybe a little bit of steering damage, because that was right in the front corner of the car block, that is not at all what Forzan Nabi needed.
No, I mean, that chicane, it does present an overtaking spot, but you've got to be generous there, and Thomas was not willing to give up that position, and as we saw, contact was made. So, like, these guys are very, very tough racers, and El Nabi, we've seen him before, he plays for keeps, and Thomas is he's one of the regulars that is always there. He does not want to give up these positions because the points he's getting are putting him in a not too bad a position in the championship. So with now less than 2 laps to go here, according to my timing screen, Thomas will be fighting every corner. It's down to these last few moments of the race where he's stayed in 4th this whole race. He's made up a couple of positions as well, actually. He's not going to let this go easily. And while El Nabi's got that speed, if there's any damage whatsoever that came from that contact, as he runs wide there, actually, maybe some steering damage. This contact was slightly heavier than usual. We'll see here as El Nabi, he goes quite deep into the corner, maybe runs a little bit wide there. Thomas looked a little more settled coming out of the exit there. El Nabi a little bit wide. So I think that at the very end of the race, El Nabi is getting a little bit desperate in the sense to try and make up this time, particularly after that contact.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be a very tough battle for Thomas because El Nabi definitely looks a lot stronger under brakes, so if there's any opportunity, El Nabi might be the favourite to carry under the brakes. But David, you've been involved in a lot of last lap battles or late race battles. What can Trent Thomas do in this position where the car behind looks to be apparently quicker and your tyres are beginning to go off? It's the end of the race. You know you're vulnerable. What can you possibly do to hold on to this position?
I think Trent Thomas has done all the right things so far, just spotting his own braking move, El Nabi's been very deep on the brakes, taking some alternative lines, getting in his mirrors, but Trent Thomas has just held on to his line and not been distracted by that. And with just a couple of kilometers left to go, that's all Trent Thomas needs to do, as El Nabi goes very slow behind him there. Did he get a slowdown?
He was on the brakes in a straight line, so I have to assume that was a slowdown. And if that's the case, that is all said and done for Trent Thomas in P number 4. He'll be able to run up the road, and it should be job done. So we'll see how it goes. But Anthony Winkelman is closing rapidly with 1 lap to go on the back of Thomas Hinz. And this is going to be a very interesting last lap, because Hinzy only has to hold him off for 1 single lap. It sounds easy, but not when the driver behind is Anthony Winkelman, Brock.
Yeah, and when Anthony's he's not had the race he would have wanted. He got a bad start, then the pit stop was messed up for him, which is rare to see from Trick Sim Sport. So I'm guessing there's probably almost a little bit of the red mist has descended for him, and he's really trying to make this work. But Hinzy, like you said, he hasn't had a lot of seat time lately, but he's still showing that he's just got this natural skill to drive cars, and he's making this BMW the whole track width. In terms of how hard he's fighting here, and he's really trying to make sure he holds on to this 8th place. After all, he started 14th, so he's made up 6 positions here as well in this BMW, and he's done a really good job. So we'll see. We'll watch here as they come through the Schumacher S's. Hinzy has been missing the apex at the he almost hit it there, and that second apex was really nice. He actually got a good run off the exit of the Schumacher S's. As we come down here, Winkelman's still quite strong under brakes, but can't go for a move here.
I'll have to quickly cut across here, Brock, because we do have our race leader around the final corner, taking the victory in round number 5 of the Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australia. It's victory for Brad Watson. He takes it out after 45 minutes. It's going to be Peasnick in P number 2, with Luis Paulo Gallen coughing across the finish line for P number 3. We will go back to the battle, though, between Hinzy and Winkelman, though, for P number 8, because Hinz is not strong through the chicane, and Winkelman tried to do it on the power, but oversteer, wasn't able to do it. Takes a wide line, tries to build momentum through the exit, hoping that there'll be an error from Hinzy, but Hinzy does not crack, and now Nabi is facing the wrong way on the circuit. We'll ignore that, because Thomas Hinz will bring it home only just for P number 8. A great display of defense in the last lap there after all the pressure Winkelman threw at him. But that was a very interesting final few laps of the race. After what was a little bit of a slow burner initially, it really kicked off in the final few laps there, Brock.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we had quite a few good battles there. Personally, I think we were robbed of a battle between Watson, Peasnick, and Gallen in the early stages and in the very end of the race there. I think Peasnick definitely had the pace. And when having a look at Mazomo now, who he's tried to go for the move into the last turn there. After starting 27th, he's in 19th, up 8 positions, which is a great effort in such a competitive series like this. He'll come across the line in 19th place, but I think we can give old Simon a pat on the back for that effort. That was a real good race for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good to see the FT1 car out in force, and always putting on a good show and coming through the field. But we will get your race results up on screen after what was actually 46 minutes of racing here at the Nurburgring. And in the end, it was Brad Watson who capitalized from a very chaotic first few laps of the race. He got the race lead and never looked back. John Peasnick had to fight for second place, but in the end, in the pit stops, it was all said and done against Luis Paulo Gallen, who did fall back in the end a little bit, but never looked in doubt for a podium. Trent Thomas would come home in P number 4 after issues for Forza and El Nabi on the final lap, with Ross Rizzo, your championship leader, coming home in P number 6. Dane Warren would bring it home in P number 7 with Thomas Hinz, Anthony Winkelman, and Martin Silvassi, all rounding out your top 10.
And in 11th, we have Gene the Genie Fiddies, and 12th is Steve Jansen. 13th, Blake Neck ended up where he started after that spin. Mauricio Lastres in 14th, James McKee 15th, Scott Solosky in 16th, Jamie McKnight 17th, up 7 positions, Benjamin Johnson 18th, Simon Mazomo in 19th, and rounding out our top 20 here tonight is Alex J. John.
Bringing things home in 21st place would be Cameron Stubber, and David Mulhall brings it home just behind what was a very close finish between those two for P number 22. Simon Dutt would bring home in 23rd with Wayne Hewitt and Blair Walton, your top 25. Andrew Mogridge and Alex Court would round out your cars on the lead lap for 27th, with Dan King, Matt Hopparts, Phil Otto, Les Peck, Will Chen, all making it 1 lap down, Reese Harradine 2 laps down, And then, unfortunately, Thomas McMillan running into issues, including a very long pit stop in the race and eventually retiring the car, with John Schultz and Daniel Shenny all running into issues at the start of this race. But it was a very chaotic race in the end. And David, this championship continues to get more and more intense, and it's great to see yet another car at the front of this race.
Yep, I'm really happy for John Peasnick as well. He's done well with that McLaren. We talk, it's an odd choice. We say, it's difficult on its tires, but good on him bringing that home in second place. And that also makes the championship a little bit spicier because he's been quick but had some inconsistent results. He finishes ahead of Ross Rizzo this round. That might bring the championship just a little bit closer, and this will be a series to watch through to its finale.
Yep, absolutely. And we do actually have our second place finisher here for an interview. So we'll drag Mr. John Peasnick up after what was a very, very tough race for him. It was a little bit harder than it maybe should have been. The car looked like it was very strong at the start of the race for you, John. But in the end, you had to really fight against Luis Portugal, especially in the pit stops, to make that second place happen.
I believe we may be having some mic issues here.
Yeah. So we might just double check if we're all good with John. Not quite hearing you at the moment, but it was a very tough race for the McLaren. Perhaps not the easiest circuit to have the McLaren, and some cars might have a better advantage. But we'll just see if we have John now. No luck at the moment, unfortunately. So unfortunate there for our second place driver, who is still considering everything he's had to put up with in the McLaren so far this season. Second place is one of his better results, I do believe, and continuing to make a charge in this championship, really starting to put pressure on the Trick Sim Sports guys for this championship. Of course, John recently rounding out the International GT3 Championship with the championship as well. So on a run of form at the moment. And we'll just try once more, John. Any luck with the mic? Unfortunately not. So apologies to John there, but we won't be able to get an interview with him tonight, unfortunately. And we're just waiting for anyone else who wants to come up for an interview. If you did compete in this race, be sure to come in for an interview. It'd be awesome to have some of our top five in particular come on down. But Brock, this championship, I believe it heads off to another track next week, which I believe is a completely different characteristic. And it's going to be, once again, very interesting to see just how the balance of performances with these GT3 cars changes, because every track, you have a different car, perhaps a different team, or even a different driver continuing to rise to the forefront.
Yeah, that's it. And next week we're actually heading to, in a couple of weeks' time, I should say, to Spa-Francorchamps, which you've just had the Formula One race at in real life. Great track, and it's an enduro as well. So the whole scene changes. We go from this sort of track, which is you've got a bit of twisting and turning, and the cars have to have good change of direction, to Spa, where you've got to set the car up really interestingly to be at low downforce, but also good through that middle sector to try and get through Puon and a few of the other more technical parts of the track there. So it's a really interesting balance that you have to hit. And like you said, that balance of performance always come into effect. So the BMW may work really well there compared to some of the other cars.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And one driver that we did have in the race, in a car we don't often see him, of course, in season one, we did see him in the Audi R8, but this time, Mr. Thomas Hinz decided to take the BMW out for a spin. And Thomas, those last few laps, you had Anthony Winkelman absolutely breathing down your neck. How was it from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Bo. Yeah, intense. Yeah. Yeah, it's not every day that you have someone of the caliber of Anthony, right behind you, giving you all that pressure at the end. So, yeah, it was unexpected because I knew he was ahead of us before the stop, and then after the stop, he was behind me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Must have had something happen. So, yeah, I thought he'd blast up to me and be past a few laps, but I was able to sort of more or less match him, or minimize how the gap coming down, and yeah, and ended up fighting at the end and coming out on top, which is a pleasant surprise. So yeah, no, it was good fun, really good fun race, just solid racing all around. And yeah, I'm glad to know that I can still wheel a GT3 okay, considering I don't get to race as much these days.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Of course, we have seen you away for just a few weeks, but you have come back with a very strong result in P number 8. Is that a result you're happy with, or heading into maybe Spa next week, which can actually be quite a strong circuit for the BMW with how good it can be at fuel saving? Are you perhaps looking forward, or do you think are you just looking to consolidate a top 10 at this point?
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that, to be honest. Depending on how things go with the roster at work will depend on whether I can do the next one, but fingers crossed. Yeah, no, I'm happy with the top 10. Yeah, because as I say, it's been quite a while since I've done the GT3s, especially the Beamer. I actually signed up before the season started. I went for the BMW because I wanted to try something different because I'd done quite a few hours in the Audi at that point. And then after I'd signed up is when I got the job. That's why I hadn't done any races in the series till now. So yeah, so it's he sort of jumped in tonight. Didn't really know what to expect because, as I said, it's been a long time since I've driven the Beamer, especially, and yeah, seemed to get in a nice groove with the car, and yeah, it just worked out well. And yeah, big thanks to Dane, especially. As I said, he lobbed my way, and yeah, it worked pretty well. Felt nice, and yeah, did the job today. So yeah, if I can make the next one, yeah, I think definitely be looking to maybe get a few more spots because you say Spa, is a strong track for the BMW. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
Well, fantastic. So we'll see how you do go next time if you can indeed make it at Spa and the BMW. Before we let you go, though, is there anyone else you would like to thank?
Yep, no worries. Been a while since I've done this, so hopefully I don't go, don't get it wrong.
No pressure.
So, no pressure, no. So big thanks to Rat Corp and Cash Centric for their continued supports. Very much appreciated. SRC, Jay for allowing me to put the logo on the cars as well. Big thanks there. And just as always, the team for all the support and yeah, you guys, of course, the broadcast, awesome broadcast as always, and the organisers for putting on a great series.
Fantastic. So that was Thomas Hins bringing it home in P number 8 here at the Nurburgring. But Brock, I believe you're standing by with a now microphoned up John Peasnick.
Yeah,
Ye-
sorry, boys.
That's all right, John. Good to have you in the box, mate. And well, that race went about as well as what you could expect, except for the fact that Luis Paulo Gallen looked to be holding you up a bit there. Can you tell us a bit about the pace of the McLaren and what you feel like you could have done with the car underneath you?
Yeah, thanks, boys. Yeah, overall, the race was pretty good. I can't complain with the second place at all. But at the start, yeah, it was at the pace wasn't what I expected, so it was a little bit down, and I did have a little bit of pace to burn just then. But it was all my doing. I made a few mistakes at the chicane and let Anthony through, and it was a bit of jostling there. So they were all my little errors. So and then trying to get the positions back was a lot harder than losing them because everyone's so closely matched. So a little bit disappointed with not being able to be up there with Brad at the end, but I'm pretty happy with the comeback and getting the car back into second and closing back up to him a little bit. So.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, you did have some great pace at the end of the race there. Now, I want to ask you a bit of a question about the McLaren. Obviously, our only McLaren GT3 driver in the field. How are you coming to terms with it? And is it is it a good car for you to drive? Are you comfortable in it?
Yeah, mate, I actually love the car to bits. So obviously I used to drive it a long time ago. It's a very different car to what it used to be. It used to be very fast in a straight line. It now is not. So you have to drive it very differently. But I absolutely love it. Like if you were to put me in a Merc, I would struggle like crazy. I just don't like the feeling of it. I just like the rear engine because I'm not sure if you noticed, but where I drive in my lines, they're probably a little bit different to some of the other guys. So I really rely on the traction of the rear engine car or mid engine car to get me out of the corners, and it just suits my style pretty well. So I just stick with it.
Yeah, beautiful. And just quickly, with Spa coming up in a couple of weeks, what sort of approach are you going to take to that track as opposed to somewhere like the Nurburgring GP circuit?
Well, basically, there's the cornering is much more high speed. So obviously, you stiffen the car up and whatnot. And yeah, you just got to work on the more high speed stuff and just find a compromise there. As this one's more generally low speed stuff, so completely different setup wise. But all in all, the car should be pretty decent there, dependent on some weather. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah, that's it. Well, thanks for coming into the box tonight, mate, and well done on your result. Was there anyone you wanted to thank before we let you go?
There's no one really to thank, but just obviously just shout out to Element Motorsports and yeah, just keep it up, boys. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. That was John Peasnick. And to round things off, David, I believe you're standing by with Trent Thomas.
Yep, I have our fourth place finisher, Trent Thomas. Trent, up 2 positions from where you started. Good bag of championship points. Are you happy with that?
Oh, definitely. It's always good to move forward from where you qualify. Couldn't get ahead of John, unfortunately, but I am ahead of Ross, which was good for the championship.
That is big. right towards the end, you were under some pressure from those Trick Sim Sport guys of Forzen El Nabi and Ross Rizzo. How did you keep them behind, and how did you keep your head cool with that?
Yeah, I just tried to keep my eyes forward. Forzen's obviously a really good peddler, so I managed to sort of keep a bit of a gap. You didn't really get a chance until right near the end there to have a go. Unfortunately, we made contact. He did apologise after the race, which was good. So shout out to him for that. He redressed the position and we battled on. I'm not sure what happened on that last lap, but he seemed to fade right off towards the end.
Yeah, now you pitted a little bit earlier than some of the other guys around you. What do you think was the optimal pit strategy for this race?
Well, because you don't take tyres, it's a bit of a hard one. It's good to sort of run the tank pretty much as low as you can, but I was starting to struggle with the tyres a bit, so I thought getting into the pit lane might help me give the tyres a bit of a chance to cool down while I was on the lane, and that was the idea of pitting when I did.
Awesome. Well, a good result for you. Who do you need to thank from your team and from you?
You guys for putting on the broadcast, GLA for hosting, and Amazon Web Services, Dripping Paint Graphics, and Eclipse Signage for Fusion Sim Racing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Trent Thomas, our fourth place finisher, and pretty happy with how his championship is going. Back over to you to wrap it up, Bo.
Well, there we go. That is round number 5 of the Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australia, all done and dusted. And once again, did not disappoint at all. The series continues to go from strength to strength after each and every race and season, which is fantastic to see. And definitely looking forward to Spa coming up next time, because that is one of the most high-speed, tricky circuits to really nail. And we saw last season that really provided quite the finale, quite the season or spectacle for this series. But it's not all we have here on V8 Online this week, because on Friday night, we'll be taking the Australian Online Supercars Championship over to the high-speed circuit of Phillip Island, which is always a fantastic circuit for the V8s to run at. Everyone knows it, so you can expect some extremely competitive times and competition throughout the entire field. And in case they don't wear themselves out with Phillip Island, we return for the finale, week number 12, round number 12 for the Monday night V8 Supercar official at Phillip Island. Sam Blacklock is leading the championship, but can he hold on all the way to the checkered flag? And then, of course, next Wednesday, we have the Porsche Super Cup Australia at the Nurburgring as well. And David, you have a bit of experience with this, with the Porsche at the Nurburgring. How difficult are the Porsches going to be in that circuit?
Well, we talk ad nauseum almost about the brakes in those Porsche Cup cars, and the Nürburgring GP circuit's going to be an interesting one for that. It's a very tough braking zone into the first corner, downhill, very tight, and enough elevation change around. It's going to be exciting. That's going to be a good race, and I won't be up here in the comms box because I'll be down there racing it, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
Fantastic. And I'll probably be racing that one as well. So I'll be sure to give you a bit of a headlight flash. But one race that I know a lot of people will be looking forward to next Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, Brock. It's the one and only special event of them all.
Yeah, we've got Max Bantz coming up, which we have seen some great and interesting racing in the last couple of Max Bantz. So it is Revenge of the Yeet. There is a great video by Southpaw Racer, our own Reese Gardner, for that one. So I am very keen, and hopefully we'll be racing myself. But I think it's the Cadillac. I'm not sure what track it is at though, Bo.
And it's going to be at Suzuka, but not this is the layout you would perhaps expect. And if you don't know, I'll leave you just to go watch the Southpaw Racer trailer, because it's going to be a very interesting race with a very different Suzuka circuit. But after that, we do bring things back a little bit more seriously, because it is the start of the V8 Supercars Online Premier Series Endurance season. It's the Imola 500. There are retro liveries as well for the retro round. Already on the Facebook pages, you have seen a lot of teams starting to reveal their paint. Be sure to catch them all live in action on the iRacing Esports Network, which if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, leave a like on the video, and maybe even leave a comment on what was your favorite part of round number 5 of the Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australia. But on behalf of Brock Cadai and David Haynes for joining me in the booth for this one, this has been V8 Online's coverage, and we will catch you next time.
3, 2, 1. Last year I was sitting at a desk as a sales manager, and now I'm official McLaren F1 simulator test driver.
So there's 1.4 behind.
This opportunity is huge.
Oh, that's it, 46. Wow. That's faster than the factory McLaren driver, and he's done 6 laps.
Let's go race.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.